So how many of you have read Kevin's book already? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. And how many of you are familiar with Kevin or know who he is, or you just coming here for the drinks? No idea?
Be honest.
As you heard from Jessica's talk about Kevin's bio, like me, it is varied, and it's one of the things that drew me to him and what he does. But I think I want to start just by asking Kevin a question about design and getting into the field of design. When you were in high school, was design a thing that you thought of as this could be a potential career path? Was it framed like that to you when you were in school? And how did you if not, how did you find your way into it?
Yeah, I think during that time, and I was raised for the better part in the downriver Detroit metro area, so part of American Auto, most of the neighbors were technicians, factory workers, engineers, business people working for the big automotive brands. So honestly, your question, design felt like 1,000 miles away.
Yeah, because you've bounced around. The curiosity, you've let it lead you into other different fields, different paths, different approaches. Do you think that's something that, if you wrote a book about it, do you think it's something that people can learn, or is it that was your innate way of approaching?
With every chapter, there was always some fraction of resistance. Whether it was engineering, and I remember my freshman advisor, again, the first round of midterms or whatever, and the initial difficulties that I had undergoing that transition, it's like, maybe you should just do something else. This isn't for you. But it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm curious. I'm curious about that. And being raised in a black American household, family unit, family structure, that generations previous, we're used to that resistance. We're used to being told that isn't for you, but still you're curious, you lean into it, you figure it out. Sort of having pride and knowledge in yourself and what you're capable of, even if it's difficult in the beginning. And it's like every inflection point that I've gone through, there's always been a healthy amount of resistance. So now I guess you could say I'm used to that. And in the book, I just try to just frame that story of experiences so that hopefully all of you who read the book see a bit of yourself in that. Because we all will go through life feeling those points of resistance. It's inevitable. And how you handle it is up to you.
Can we talk about the sneaker designing? Because obviously I know that's something that we both have in common is sneaker obsession. How did you get involved in it? What was the... Oh, there we are. John, you're doing a great job as the page holder.
So, again, that childhood memory of that Nike commercial always stuck with me. And little did I know that I'd land at Nike, a couple of chapters later in career. So over the better part of a year, the Jordan brand mentored me through 2 footwear designs, got shoes out in the market, and it was a gratifying experience.
John, you want to...
Can you talk about that moment again with Albert? Because I think it's an important moment that everyone, yes, you had the suit, you were walking around with the suit, looks good in a suit, mind you, but you ended up near the design world of Albert. Can you talk about that moment where he kind of saw you?
Yeah, so Nike being the collegial sort of campus that it was nothing to have a coffee chat and get kicked over to 2 more people for coffee, and the chain of networking continued. So sure.
He's here. You don't have to right. Okay, there we go.
Sure enough, I stumbled across Albert, and he was one person that spent a little bit more time probing in terms of where I was coming from. He didn't just look at my title. He wanted to know the real Kevin behind the title. So I really appreciated that about him, of taking that extra time to get to know me. And then he started inviting me to just help on some of the initiatives in his team. You can just come here and represent yourself as Kevin. You're not accountable for your lunch hour. You're not accountable for your evenings and weekends.
And Albert is the mentor to Kat Holmes, who wrote the Mismatched book in this series. And so there's a connection there as well. Now, Kevin, as everyone can see, Kevin did write this book here. Sorry. But Kevin, can you talk about that first moment you had a conversation with executive editor of MIT Press, Robert Pryor, aka Bob Pryor, and how did that process go? What was that first meeting like? Paint the picture for us all.
So Bob being the gracious soul that he is, he's a great listener. And as well as, John also sort of whispering in my ear at key moments around that time where they just are just excellent sages and that they listen for a while and then they just knock you over the head with a nudge of clarity. Like, I think you're trying to say this. Bob, you said, wouldn't it be nice if someone could write a book that could crack through the ambiguity of design thinking in the business world?
And then I want to note that, you mentioned this archetypal moment, and I noticed that Maria Giudice is in the audience, who wrote the DEO book, the Design Executive Officer book, that kind of forecasted a future where people who can combine business sense, technology sense, and design sense would lead in the executive ranks. You're being VP, BCG, etc. But Tom, can you talk about why it's so hard for the suits to understand the suits to wearing the black suits? Or, like, you get the business people, you get the technology people, and the nerds, and then you have the designers, the cool people. Like, how do you walk that line between the three? And I also want to note, this is Gary Hustwit, director of Helvetica. This is like such a big deal. So I'm sorry, I'm a big fan. So can you talk about that? Sorry, interruption. Go ahead.
When we think about who has steered the course of industries, enterprises, institutions, I think the business disciplines have enjoyed most of the spoils of war, of guiding strategy, guiding priority. Arguably, recently, over the last few decades, Silicon Valley and the rise of software. So the technologist has garnered some bandwidth at that table. But design, I think, has been the most recent to the party. So there's still a lot of ambiguity around, like, what is design, and how does that compare with what we know design thinking to be? And in the book, I just try to not just add to existing canon around some of these notions. I just try to just shine a light on that fact that the precedent for design is actually very young. So, yeah, hopefully that answers.
I'm going to pass back to the director, but I have one important one here because we do have the top design operations leader here in the world, Allison Rand, over there. And Allison Rand stands for like getting things done. Fine, you've got an idea, but when's it going to get done? Is it done yet? Is it done? And so, but I mean that not in jest, but I think when you're a business-minded person, you have execution acumen. When you're an engineering person, the bridge cannot fall. When you're design-minded, it covers so many types of design that you get like, oh wait, I think this is similar to the iced tea that I drank on the side of the Bahamas when I was, you just diverge so much. And it's almost anti-execution. Yet this book carries so much knowledge. I mean, you can like flip it to any page and someone's like, I don't know if you noticed LinkedIn, but they're just like copying pages here all over the place on LinkedIn. What is about execution and design that you've learned in this book that people can just use from day one?
Honestly, I think there's a delicate orchestration. If you believe me that all disciplines are going to be in the room at some point, if you're just going to require it. So I think of it in terms of like breadth and depth. Breadth is, there needs to be chemistry building across disciplines in terms of how we communicate, how we collaborate, how we strategically align on the points that really matter. Because design is still accountable to produce relevant outcomes, and communicate that promise that the brand is after. And this is where the depth comes in. The depth of expertise is still required as well. So sometimes when we see the Post-it notes and the brainstorms, we get enamored and we think that we're doing design thinking, we think we're doing design. And that's sort of the very short of it. Like, that's 10% of the truth. And we have to give the subject matter experts, whether you're a designer or a high pedigree business person or an engineer, the breathing room to go do their stuff well. And for design, sometimes we need to diverge. We need the room, the play space to go find the extreme information, the extreme and latent insights, and then bring something substantial back to the team room. We may need to go make a prototype, and the same is true for engineering. We may need to go do a prototype and then bring that to the team room to move it forward. It isn't just all happening around the whiteboard or on the Post-it notes. So that breadth of depth, I think, is critical to hopefully allow us to yield relevant, desirable, viable, feasible outcomes that will move the business and grow the opportunity.
All right, you're giving away way too much of the book for free now. This is actually buy the thing and you'll. I will open it up to questions from you all for Kevin or for John about Reimagining Design, the book or the concept. Raise a hand. Come on.
I actually have a question
go.
about what was your process for gleaning the knowledge that you've been amassing over the years and through your different, like when you sat down to write a book, did you have folders? Did you sit down and did you retreat for 2 weeks? Like how much were you tracking working towards the book over the last?
It is a powerful question. Thank you for asking it, because I think a lot has happened that I didn't expect. Again, like based on recent experiences, standing up capabilities at the likes of BCG and the like, the idea of codifying those learnings could have been easily another book with a bunch more frameworks, more case studies and benchmarks. But at the start of the contract was when the pandemic started. So, and it was compounding pandemics. It wasn't just COVID. It was, police brutality on the Black community, rise of hate crimes against Asian American Pacific Islander communities, and ongoing concern for climate change, craziness in politics. Like, it turned into a very emotional journey unpacking all that has happened. And the conviction was, boy, I do need to keep going in this direction. And I really applaud like Bob Pryor and the team and John's support to go there, go to the personal. It wasn't supposed to be a personal book, but it ended up becoming that. And it became the frame for allowing people who read the book to see themselves in the book. Because I think no matter your race, creed, gender, we've all felt like the other at some points. We've all felt that resistance. We've all felt that covert stuff. And even in the face of resistance, you can still be a leader. You can still impact change, no matter what your title is. So if it gives someone courage to do what's necessary to lean into their curiosity, I felt like my job is done.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't read the book yet, but I'm really curious, and you touched on it just now, just a little bit, of this idea of strategic innovation, and I would ask for what? Because we have so many crises, so many issues that are facing us. I firmly believe that we live by design. Everything around us is by design. As designers, we have a responsibility, right? And so I'm just curious how, if you address that and how you address that in your book. And I'm thinking of climate change and thinking of
Yes.
all these systems that are in place that really are not serving us and that are leading us to complete the apocalypse, I suppose, for lack of a better word.
No, the short answer is yes. Does the book serve as the magic pill for all of that? No. But I will say, I sort of referenced one of the visuals that I see my friend and mentor use in many of his annual sort of design and tech reports or resilience and tech reports, this notion of the infinity loop. And that I think so much in our society is so wired around marketers marketing, consumers consuming. So this infinity loop. And with computation, and I definitely recommend you read John's latest book, How to Speak Machine. But the infinity loop is speeding up. And it's almost like sawing into either side of that engine where the harm is clearly being done. And sometimes I think speed can be an implied authority. I mean, I felt that even in the business world where, okay, there's a plan, there's concerns, but people are quick to move on. to get stuff done, to get things executed. And we're not allowing ourselves the bandwidth and space to problem solve for the system of stakeholders that are around any opportunity. And are we pursuing growth that's actually sustainable, conscious, responsible? Our consumers actually caring about these things too. So should you, company. So let's go slow to have these conversations, problem solve it, to go fast later when it's respectful and right to do so.
Commercial break for a second. There's this book called Reimagining Design, and if everyone in this room were to get a copy and get 10 more people to buy a copy, it would actually make a big difference for this author, Kevin Bethune over here.
And planet. And design.
But I do want to note, I'm selling the book, so I'm going to do this for a second.
And I heard that there's an audiobook version of it. Who did you get to read the audiobook? What famous actor did you get to voice the audiobook?
This novice voice actor right here.
You have a great voice. Do we have any other questions from the crowd? Yes, Raja.
So my question is, as you're thinking about preparing people who are graduating from institutions of higher learning to enter into this reimagining design, how can we reimagine higher education?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking of it across the disciplines. I'm not just talking about how we teach designers.
I think institutions in general are grappling with the idea of they now have to respond to the needs of lifelong learners. The degree is just one spike, but ideally we're all like lifelong learners. We're always curious. That should be the idea. But hopefully institutions really embrace like what the future needs. So, I know a lot of programs are becoming more cross-disciplinary, but they need to lean in even more to that and give plenty of ingredients for their students to sort of navigate with the right, of course, mentorship and support systems around them, but to make them believe that any one of these disciplines that we talked about tonight, it's possible for their life. Like they don't have to make risk-averse choices like maybe I had to make when I was younger. Like there's actual vibrant careers in design. There's many spectrums of design that they could, and maybe there's hybrid roles that don't exist by title today, but the future requires that. So maybe with boldness and courage, like supporting them in their journey to be more courageous in their learning path, even if there's not a job description waiting for them immediately at the moment.
And I'm curious about people who may be already in the workforce who are looking to expand their skill sets and mindsets. Like, what should that look? I'm just curious. Everybody says go back to school. Like, is it this idea of going back, or is it like how do you change the people sort of navigate what's already out of that initial credential, whatever it is, a degree, whatever?
Honestly, I think curiosity needs to continue to be a defining thread. And, whether you go to grad school, that might be right for someone that feels like they can accelerate a deepening of their subject matter expertise through that experience. Or someone can, when they're working a day job, they can carve a little bit of time for themselves to invest in continuous learning, whether it's an in-person class or an online class. But ideally, we're always feeding ourselves with the right nutrients. And ideally, you make those choices based on what you feel is going to empower you for you, versus feeling like you have to go through some stepping stone progression because your friends did that, or because maybe that path was celebrated, and with the folks that have come before you. The future requires different things, so it's really about leaning into curiosities, and maybe it's little experiments that you take to just see what's there with that. Having coffee with someone outside of your department, it could be that small. To taking a class could be the next step. Maybe it's going to a different company to learn more on a different platform, or going to grad school. But the key word is empowering your path forward.
Your company now is called Dreams, Design, and Life. I have a T-shirt. I bought the T-shirt for it, but I never asked you why you named it that, and also maybe talk about what you do now.
Yeah. No. The idea of dreaming, and even in the face of resistance, dreaming boldly. Even if the world says it's not for me, I want to dream and lean into that curiosity. So I think it's important for all of us to have a vision of ourselves, even if it's not like a definitive answer. It could be fuzzy, but we should always entertain a notion of like, what is that future expression of self, and keep dreaming for that, right? And then life, the other extreme, is the concrete stuff that we navigate. Overt stuff, covert stuff, pragmatic stuff, concrete choices, concrete realities, constraints. But design has been a beautiful broker in between. And it's funny, I used to use it as a hashtag. Green Design to Life. You saw me on Instagram years ago. I used that as a hashtag for things that I thought were cool. And then sure enough, it became the brand of my company. And to round out your question around like the type of work, there's two filters for any work that we take on in terms of client partners. One is it's got to be a truly human-centric challenge. Like, we're truly unlocking human potential in some way. We're fostering human connection. We're feeding into something that makes us more human, whether you use Maslow's hierarchy of needs or whatever it is. And the other filter is, because my career has been an amalgamation of physical creation and digital creation experiences, I want to work on integrated solutions that are seamless in nature, that span across physical, digital, and service-related affordances. So no surprise, half the clients are like IoT, Internet of Things startups that have physical, digital components, or supporting old friends in large company innovation groups on some of the same endeavors. Yeah.
Kevin, because you are the board chair of the Design Management Institute, which is all the head honchos of all the top companies in the world, tell me, what is it like? How do you get them all to like behave with each other? What's your secret?
Honestly, though, I think when we convene at some of these forums, like Design Management Institute is one, there's others, but ideally we're all coming to find inspiration outside of our immediate realities. We all need to sort of look beyond the walls of our companies or our circumstances and be a part of communities. I highly recommend that for anyone in their career, is bolt yourself to a community outside of your reality and make friends. And community is a beautiful thing because you can share the things that you've done. And it's not like about stroking your own ego to share and brag about the things you've done. But I've found in my experience, when you share, whether it's giving a talk, writing an article, or mentoring someone, you free your brain up to learn something new. And the universe conspires to feed you at the same time. So to Raj's question around continuous learning, community is a huge source of continuous learning. I learned so much from Raja watching her talks, and many of the folks in this room. Incredible. And I'll embarrass my dear friend Helen Walters with TED. Thank you for coming. The platform that she cultivates and curates just blows my mind. And having the opportunity to be a part of that community and have Helen's coaching for the 4 superpowers of design that happened in 2017. Vibrant community that we can share, and we form bonds, and we're friends to this day as a result of those moments. So find your tribe outside of your reality.
As John has mentioned, there are books here for sale in paper form, soon to be audio form.
Oh, it just came out the 10th. An audiobook is available.
It's available. Yep. Get it, read it, listen to it on the subway. Kevin Bethune is I think there's some drinks back there. There's some cookies back there. Thank you to MIT Press, and thank you to Vitsœ for hosting us, and thanks for Kevin for coming all the way out here and being in New York and getting to share his wisdom with us. And thank you all for coming out. All right.